Hello, Sean. Hello, Sean's cousins. And hello, friends of Sean who may be watching in on this Avi Reads video. Welcome to be here. Now, we're reading from Genesis, and today we begin Genesis 2. And then we pick up on the Hobbit where we left off. So here we are, Genesis 2. God has created the heavens and the earth. Now we get a little bit more detail about what went on and how he created, especially how he created man and the things he made for man. So here we go. And thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their host. That means everything that goes along with them. And the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested. God rested from working. That's kind of a hint to us to take our time out and rest too. Rest is very, very important. He rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day, and he sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and had made. Now this is the account of the heaven and the earth when they were created, the day that the Lord God made earth and heaven. Now no shrub of the field was yet in the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprouted, for the Lord God had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to cultivate the ground. But a mist used to rise from the earth and wore the whole surface of the ground like a fog, kind of like a fog. You know, you felt the dampy dew in the morning when you got running barefoot in the morning. That's kind of like that. Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils, that's into his nose, the breath of life. And man became a living being. God made man out of the dirt of the earth. We are made up of stardust from what God created when he made the heavens and the earth, and he breathed into us. The Lord God planted a garden toward the east, in Eden. This is the Garden of Eden you've heard about. And there he placed a man whom he had formed. And out of the ground the Lord God caused to grow every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food. We're back to apples and oranges and apricots and peaches and pears and all the good trees that we love to eat. He also made the tree of life, also in the very middle of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That one would be important. We'll be back to that in a sec. Now a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided and became 4 rivers. The name of the first is Pishon. It flows around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good, and bdellium and the onyx stone are there. And the name of the second river is Gihon. It flows around the whole land of Cush. And the name of the third river is Tigris. It flows to the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the Euphrates River. Now, some of your uncles have been over to Iraq and that whole area, and they've seen the Tigris River. They've seen the Euphrates River. Sean's dad has seen it. He actually had a base right next to it, if I remember right. You guys ask your daddies and your uncles about that. Now, we'll leave it right there in Genesis chapter 2. We'll pick that up again next time. Now we're going to head back to the Hobbit. Let me put the Bible aside. And here we're back to the Hobbit. Now, if you remember, Bilbo got flustered because Gandalf suggested that he was going to send him on an adventure. And you know, hobbits don't like adventures. But we pick up Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing long but quietly. After a while, he stepped up and with a spike on his staff scratched this queer sign on the Hobbit's beautiful green front door that he had just painted. Then he strode away, just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well unless he put them down in his engagement tablet. Like this: Gandalf, Tea, Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell. Then he remembered. He rushed and put on the kettle for tea. and put on another cup and saucer, and an extra cake or two, and ran to the door. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting," he was going to say, when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf with a blue beard, tucked into a golden belt, and very bright eyes under his dark green hood. As soon as the door was open, he pushed inside, just as if he'd been expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg and said, "Dwalin at your service," he said with a low bow. "Bilbo Baggins at yours," said the Hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions for the moment. When the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "I'm just about to take tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. "And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came and hung up his things up in your hall without a word of explanation? What would you do, I ask you?" They had not been at table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came an even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the Hobbit, and off he went to the door. "So you got here at last." That was what he was going to say to Gandalf this time, but it wasn't Gandalf, was it? But it was not Gandalf. Instead, there was a very old-looking dwarf at the step with a white beard and a scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door was open, just as if he'd been invited. Now, we know Bilbo didn't invite him. Who do you think invited him? "I see they have already begun to arrive," he said, when he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung his red one next to it, and "Balin at your service," he said, with his hand on his breast, which is the proper way to introduce yourself. "Thank you," said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing for him to say, but "they have begun to arrive" had flustered him badly. They? He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself, which had not happened this time. He had a horrible thought about the cakes, that they might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it however painful. He might have to go without, and that's not very easy for a hobbit to do. And we'll have to leave it there. Now, we'll take it up next time with all the dwarves starting to arrive, and flustering our Mr. Bilbo Baggins, who doesn't like adventures. We will see what happens later. Y'all have a good night and a good day, and I'll see you next time.